Good day. How are we doing, guys? How are we doing? All right, let's just get set up here and get situated. Just want to get some confirmations that you guys can hear me okay. Can you hear me? Perfect. All right, guys, how's it going? Welcome to the 25th of November Academy Q&A live stream. I am indeed 2 minutes late. You will have to sue me. I am sorry. All right. What's up, Graham? How's it going, man? We've got Ashwin. Ricardo, how are you, man? Samuel, you all right, man? How you going, Jack? You okay, man? Sebastian, Adam, Mika's halfway through week 2. That's really good, man. Samuel Irving, that name, your name rings a bell, man. You're like a personal trainer or something, right? Aren't you fucking like shredded or something? I'm not mistaken. Hey, Ethan, how's it going, man? Bruno, what's going on, dude? Hey, Stefan. Hey, Varun. Hey, Darshan, how's it going, man? What's up, Sebastian? Hey, James. Mika. Shouldn't have asked that question off the rip. I didn't see the question. Hey, Harrison. Hey, Amlike. Hey, Cutter. All right, guys, how are we doing? So welcome to the 25th of November live stream. We want some good questions today. I'm here for you, here to answer them. Got an hour or two. We'll start as per usual with some questions in the YouTube chat for those of you that are on time, prompt and early, in spite of me not being here exactly on time. So let's get into it and answer some questions, shall we? My question is, how do I outcompete my competitor? Well, they are doing north of 150K this month. They have an edge with referrals, and I'm worried. We have to realize, man, that every single person that outcompetes you at the moment outcompeted someone above them. And so you don't need to necessarily worry about your competition because they did to their competition what you can also do to them. And the only thing you need to worry about being better at them than is delivering results and having a better product. A lot of your competitors will seem very famous. They're going to have deep pockets. They're going to have lots of money. They're going to have lots of expense. But what happens to a lot of people who are far ahead of you is they make mistakes. They become bureaucratic. They become slow. They become comfortable. They become lazy. And they lose the edge that got them to 150K a month. And that's not always going to be a reliable thing. But generally speaking, your market is going to be so significantly large that even if you had 10 competitors doing 150K a month, they wouldn't even capture 10% of the entire market share. You know, this is the great thing about selling information. It's the great thing about having agency services is we can't really like monopolize an industry because of how big the markets are and how willing people are to rebuy information, rebuy services, etc., etc. For example, Gym Launch, $40 million a year business, probably doesn't even have a 2 to 3% market share on the gym niche. So you don't have to worry about them, man. That's kind of the first thing. Competition doesn't really matter. Especially if you only want to get to like, 10K a month, 20K a month. Competition becomes a little bit more worrying when you want to get to the multi-7 or 8 figure realm, because then you're up against people who are fucking animals. But at the beginning, like, it doesn't really matter. One from Neo Clips here saying, a bit off topic, what did it feel like when you saw your first $1 million in the bank after working so hard for years? Honestly, man, it didn't really feel like anything. And that was because I watched that number grow for a few years. We had our first mil liquid, I think, by the time that I was 21, maybe, yeah, about then. And it didn't really feel like much because that number had grown gradually over time. You know, when you start making money, you start with $1,000 in the bank, and then it becomes $5,000, and it becomes $10,000, and you celebrate those little milestones, but they're They don't. It's sort of the contrast of progress is so gradual, and you don't necessarily. It's not like you just randomly win the lottery overnight and you go from $0 to $1 million in your bank. You know, you go from 1K to 5K to 10K to 20K to 25K to 35K to 50K to 75K to 85K to 100K to 105K to 130K, and the increments of your your cash balance in your bank are so gradual that the big number by the time you get there doesn't really feel celebratory, because you're basically going from your baseline to a slightly higher baseline. So before I had $1 million in the bank, I probably, like 1 month before, had like 930K. It's kind of like the same thing with when I hit 100K subscribers on YouTube. It happened so gradually. It happened over the course of like 2, 3 years, 4 years of just making videos every single day, working every single day, and just watching that number just slowly increase. The big sort of ending number doesn't really mean anything when the results tend to be so gradual. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Jed here. What are your thoughts about co-founding your first agency? I think that 99% of people should not have a business partner at the beginning of their agency journey. And that's because what an agency will do when you start it is it will teach you what you're good at, and it will teach you what you're bad at. And it will teach you what natural skills you have and natural abilities you have, and it will show you your weaknesses and show you your strengths. My general opinion is that pretty much anyone, can get a marketing agency to at least 10K a month by themselves. And if they can't do that, then they shouldn't have a business partner, because they don't have enough skills or competence. Like, you can get to 10K a month by being incredibly good at service delivery or incredibly good at sales. Even if you suck at sales or suck at service delivery, as long as you're good at either of those things, you'll get to 10K a month, because that skill will carry you. And what you'll find is, after doing it for a year or two, is you'll get to 10K a month, and there'll be something that you're really good at, either the back end stuff or the front end stuff, i.e. the introverted skills or the extroverted skills. That's when it makes sense to potentially seek a business partner if you need one. Before then, the chances of you falling into a business partnership with no previous commercial relationship experience, and no understanding of what makes a good business partnership, and no real understanding of yourself or business, then yeah, I wouldn't do it at the beginning. Samuel says, I have 320K in my bank at 18. What's the best investment I could make? I live really below my means. Well, first of all, you're kind of broke, man. And I know that that's going to sound kind of crazy, but the first thing I would advise is that you release any level of pride or happiness that you have to that number, because one supercar is going to wipe out basically 60% of your net worth. So you're not rich, first of all. And I'm not saying that you have any pride behind that, but a lot of people tend to have that perception. Okay. So first of all, and I mean this with total love, is you're broke. It might feel like you're rich because you're richer than 99% of men your age. But if you want to stay at that level, then you need to start perceiving yourself as broke. Okay. And I say this to all my clients who are sat on 1 mil liquid, 2 mil liquid. I got a mastermind client the other day who sat on like 2 mil liquid, and he's like, oh, like, I'm really doing. I'm like, dude, you're not. You're fucking broke. You buy one decent house in the UK, and you've lost half your net worth. You're not rich yet, right? So, in terms of the best investment you can make, honestly, nothing. There's no real active investment that's going to return you more than you can currently return on focusing on your skill sets and focusing on your businesses. Active investments with the level that you're at will return less than you would make if you focused. For example, you could go and buy and leverage a couple of rental properties, get tenants in there, and get a 7% return on your cash. But that's going to require you to start a new entity. It's more lawyers, it's more accountants. Now you've got to manage these tenants. You've got to have a management company. There's an employee involved. There's freelancers, all this bullshit. And that's taking away from the skill that gave you that 320 grand in the first place. So my advice for the position that you're in with the $320,000 or pounds that you've got is, first of all, you haven't got anything and you're broke, and you need to keep behaving that way. But second of all, don't spend it. Just don't try and invest it. Just put it in high interest bank accounts. First of all, you can't even get any private banking because there's not enough money to get a private bank. So you can't really get access to the super high interest bank accounts. But go and buy long-term, low-risk assets that deliver a low return that allow you to just get 3 to 4% on your money and keep you focused on your business. Go and create a Hargreaves Lansdown ISA or SIP, like pension account, although pension's a little bit boomer. You might not want to do that. Just go and start an ISA. Pay like a financial management company like Hargreaves Lansdown their 0.5% management fee, and put that money in a Trojan fund or something with a company like Hargreaves Lansdown or some other financial manager that's verified and worth hundreds of billions in management, and invest like that. That's what I do. And I'm sat on a little more, so quite a bit more, but you don't need to worry. And then you can chuck 10 grand in some fucking crypto pump and dump for the dopamine of it, but you'll probably lose it. So yeah, hope that helps, man. Louis says, how can I pitch on a sales call when I haven't got any client results yet? Well, when it comes to pitching people, you obviously need to have confidence. And the only thing that will support a solid pitch and make a pitch work is conviction. And you need to have extreme confidence in your pitch. If you don't have any results, then you can't get your confidence and conviction from the delivery of results. But you should have conviction and confidence in your willingness to do anything in your power to find out how to get results. The way I got my first client was by convincing the business owner that I was working with that I would have stopped at nothing and basically gone to the ends of the earth to deliver results for him. I said to him, like, look, you'll be my first client. You just haven't done this before, but if you trust me with this money and you trust me with this credit card information, I will kill for you. I will go and get you results. I'll go to the end of the earth. And that's where my conviction came from. So you don't need client results to get clients. You just need to have conviction and confidence in your ability to. And if you can't muster that up, then you can just go and get clients for free or for refund deals or whatever. But I wouldn't recommend free clients. All right, let's have a look at some school questions then. In your recent live streams, you said that done-for-you agencies will die because of AI. Can you explain more detail what you mean by this? Is it still worth building a marketing agency and how to adapt? No, it definitely won't die. I'm just saying that a lot of what I meant by done-for-you agencies is done-for-you AI automation agencies. The tools that they currently use to sell services like NAN, et cetera, will become so good and so beginner user friendly that there won't be any technical knowledge required to utilize them and use them to deliver outcomes. And so people that sell voice agent automations to roofers will be competing with tools that can basically deliver the same result through just simple voice dictation in probably about 2 to 3 years. And there's definitely a ridiculous amount of money to be made in the next 2 to 3 years before that happens. But all of those tools, they have the visions and the missions to make all of their results available to anyone. And so done for you agencies, a lot of them will be fine, like absolutely fine. But a lot of these AI automation agencies will struggle in the future. And that's not to say that you shouldn't start one. And that's not to say that it's not a good business model. And I'm still going to endorse anyone to start an AI agency because it's a way to make millions of dollars in the next couple of years. But there's going to have to be some serious adaptation as these tools get significantly better towards custom builds and things that are a little bit trickier to deliver than just the entry level, workflow NAN creation. Danelle says EasyGrow 1 versus EasyGrow 2.0. I mean, look, you can use EasyGrow 1.0, but it's nowhere near as good as EasyGrow 2.0. So yeah, I like EasyGrow 1.0 can still get you results. But there's a reason that we recreated it, and there's a reason that we redeveloped all the modules in there, because they were dying and they weren't working as well as they used to. So yeah, it's a good question here from Kamara. How's it going, man? I'm stagnant with my info product evergreen at 50K a month for the fourth month. Every week something gets broken and stops working. I find myself saving the month all of the time. How do I get to 100K a month? Well, first of all, man, that's a question that is probably very multifaceted and would need to be discussed at way more length. So first of all, I would recommend that you just go and book a call to explore High Ticket Heaven, which is our private mentorship group for people in your position. That's a plug, shamelessly, but I'd recommend you do it because we deal with people having this situation all the time there. Go to school.com/heaven. You can check it out. But in the meantime, I mean, without any context, the only real difference between 50K a month and 100K a month is usually the volume of appointments conducted. And so the only way you get from 50K to 100K is by doubling how many calls you conduct, which typically means by doubling how much content you create, doubling how much money you spend on ads, or doubling how much outreach you do, or how much setting you do. And if the current setting systems you have won't support double the volume, then you need to build more, and that's pretty much it. You're going to find that lots of things break, but this question is pretty indicative that you need to hire an operations manager, and you probably need to find someone competent enough to deal with all these little problems for you. If things keep breaking and things stop working, it's usually a sign that everything's relying too heavily on you, because you should have people in place managing these things and actively working on them to stop them from breaking. So it sounds to me like this question is coming from two problems. One, you just need to double your sales volume, and two, you need to hire someone to basically stop things from breaking in all of your different departments. But High Ticket Heaven will probably be the place for you to go there. Jack says, to what extent does one have to be locked in to go from 0 to 10K a month in 90 days? Well, I mean, dude, if you want to do that in 90 days, you have to be locked in beyond being locked in. Doing it in 3 months, possible, but you're going to have to probably sleep 8 hours a day and then just work for the other 16 hours. You're going to have to give up your social life. You're going to have to give up your friends. You're going to have to give up dating. You're going to have to give up family time. You're going to have to give up temporary health protocols. You're going to have to give up your happiness. You're going to have to give up your mental health, all of those things. If you want to do that in 90 days, it can be done. But you're talking about sleeping 8 hours, waking up, working for 15 hours, relaxing for 1 hour, and then going to sleep. And in those 15 hours, pretty much just making cold calls the entire time. That's what you're looking at. It's possible. I basically did this, but it came with a lot of sacrifice. This is a good question from Stefan. Charlie, you've been ahead of this market for a while. If everyone follows the same path, trying to become an educational creator, synthesizer, or agency owner or consultant, whether through your program or any of the school programs, what would be the contrarian play that will crush it? So basically, what would you have to do differently? Well, I think that specifically in this online education space, the people that win at the moment are people that have charisma and are articulate and have a pretty broad, wide piece of knowledge to pull from. Because the only real way to be a contrarian or to be idiosyncratic in this market is to have a unique perspective on the market and to be able to articulate that fluently whilst also being entertaining enough and passionate enough to capture the attention of multiple people at the same time. So that's kind of the play that I use to sort of get my little corner of the market in play. Basically, like having my perception of how I think these businesses should be run and being able to communicate that fluently for hours on end without mistake. And then also having, I mean, you guys can be the judge of whether or not I've got any level of charisma to me, but having some level of personality that encourages people to watch you beyond just your knowledge. So like when you think about like Jordan Peterson, for example, although he might have fallen off recently, when Jordan Peterson had his absolute, like, and Jordan Peterson, Hamza, anyone who's had like, and not that I don't think Jordan Peterson and Hamza are in the same league, but necessarily, when any male influencer in the educational space or a synthesizing space or consulting space has their big sort of personal brand boom, it always happens because of those three reasons. They have a unique perspective that has never been explored before, which typically is resonatable with a lot of people, which means a lot of people sort of resonate with it and agree with it and understand it, or makes them feel understood. Then they can communicate that clearly, and then they wrap that in charisma and either being funny or basically having something about them that makes them entertaining to watch. That's kind of the contrarian play to break into this market. The hard part is developing a unique perspective. And, you know, I kind of had this because I got a lot of my perspective on consulting in the agency space from Sam Ovens, you know, but Sam had like an interesting sort of way of doing this because he had his perspective on how to run a consulting business, specifically with systems thinking, being very robotic, et cetera, et cetera. And he then was able to communicate that. But then also he had this sort of charisma. He had his very own sort of unique personality type that was very interesting to watch. And so, you know, I was able to sort of emulate his perspectives to a degree, but just take them to more of an extreme with the academy, for example. And, you know, using like my perspective specifically that was different to Sam's was taking the perspective of using organic cold outreach to grow instead of relying on ads. So my perspective was about using inbound and outbound methods. And that was sort of the way that I attacked the market, got really fucking good at that. And then, you know, the personal brand kind of came with that. So that's pretty much the contrarian play. Samuel again says, I'm a consultant for fitness coaches and in the process of building a new and much better product. I'm more of an all-in guy and struggle balancing marketing and product. I want to build an epic product, but I don't want to be dry on clients each month. How can I balance marketing and building the product? Just build the product for an hour a day. It's the easiest way to do it. Like if you want to actively work on your product and make more progress towards it, just spend like an hour, 2 hours a day max on it. Like carve that time out for probably at the end of the day after your sales calls and just make that product time. And then for the rest of the time, it should be acquisition. This is obviously, Sam, for you because you're an info product guy, right? So I'm assuming there's not much in the way of service delivery, which is a good thing. But if you want to get that thing refined, just do it an hour or two a day. And then after a couple of months, you'll have this beast. But you don't want to just take like, you know, a month off of acquisition because then you're gonna struggle. DH says, I have a money back guarantee if I don't deliver on my promise, but since I run ads, I obviously can't refund the ad spend. I imagine this will be one of the main objections prospects have. No, it won't, man. I did money back guarantees based on my retainer fee for years, and not a single client after 1,000+ sales calls objected to me not being able to refund the ad spend. Clients will understand this because how can you refund money that you don't receive? To them, it's a marketing expense that goes beyond you just because you manage it. It's kind of like if, like imagine if you were a recruitment agency and you were recruiting software engineers for AI agencies. And you're like, hey, if I'll place an AI engineer in your business for 10K. If it doesn't work out after 3 months, I'll refund you the 10K. Well, if it doesn't work out, they're going to have paid the salary to that person, but they're not going to come after you for the salary because it didn't go to you. Business owners understand this on a level. Like you can't basically refund money that you didn't receive. And so you'll never have that objection, man. I really wouldn't worry too much about that at all. Do you think that a 60K market size being clinics in Spain is a large enough niche to get to 1 to 3 mil a year as a done for you agency? Yeah, absolutely. For sure. How do you stop a skill from biasing niche and offering selection, especially when it's a service you'd like to deliver? For context, I recently discovered I have a strong skill building for AI and automations through my day job, and it adds real value. The skill clearly solves pain. What are your thoughts on reverse engineering it into a niche? Well, you can look at what you're good at and then ask yourself very simply, like, who would benefit from buying this? And then you just pick that niche. It's not really much more complicated than that, man. You want to interview the owner of the clinic, man, not the staff. Jorge says, what was the key shift, both in mindset and action, that took you from earning 10K a month to 50K a month at the beginning of your journey? Tell us, was 10K a month a plateau, or did you blow right past it when you hit that milestone? So when I hit my first 10K month, I did this stupid thing where I went interrailing for like 3 months. So I was like, yeah, I was like, yes, I'm making 10K a month now, brilliant, blah, blah, blah. I got very comfortable. And, I basically went like around Europe. I paid for like a trip around Europe with me and my sister, of all people. And we traveled around the whole of Europe, and I sort of worked from my laptop a bit. And that kind of destroyed the business because I wasn't really doing sales calls. I stopped making cold calls. I lost some clients. And so like I kind of made this big mistake where I kind of like took my foot off the gas. Like when you hit your 10K month, that's when you go double down on what you've done before. But I took my foot off the gas, and that was a huge mistake. Once I got back from that trip, the big action shift that got me to 50K a month was basically just hiring like 4 or 5 cold callers to do what I'd already done. So, through my cold calling efforts, I could get to 10K a month, but I was maxed out in terms of my workload at that point. Like from both I was doing all the appointment setting myself, I was doing all the sales calls myself, and I was doing all the service delivery myself. And the thing that was taking the majority of my time was my appointment setting, i.e. through cold calling. And so what I did is I basically just thought, what if I hire like 5 cold callers and pay them per appointment and train them? And, instead of me doing 8 hours of cold calling a day, what if I spent 8 hours training 5 people how to do what I'm doing? And I did that. And then I literally like from that, I 3 to 5x the appointment flow. And then what I would then do is instead of me taking like, 2 or 3 sales calls a day, I started taking like, 6 to 8 sales calls a day. And that's when it really got big. Then I got to like 50K a month. And that was all it was. The only thing I changed was just hiring like a ton of people to do my cold calling. You can do the same thing with making ads or doubling down on content, but it's usually just the volume of appointments. Because at that point, you've got a service delivery system that works. You've got a sales system that works. You've got a pipeline that flows, and it's just as easy as just putting more volume through the thing, Good question from Louis here saying, what's the best way to handle 2 decision makers on a sales call? And the best thing to do here is obviously you get them both on and you run through the sales script exactly as you would usually run through it. But when you ask the questions, you kind of ask them individually. So for the sort of discovery questions about the business or about the problem, you let them answer in their own way. But when you get to the emotional questions of how would this have an impact on your life? Like what would the cost of not doing this be? Like how soon do you want to get started? You ask both of them. So you say, okay, so for this question, I want both of you to answer individually, and John will ask you first, and you sort of lead them through it, and then they both answer at the same time. Believe it or not, it's actually way easier to close 2 people on a call than it is 1, because you get this sort of like emotional frenzy going where if you get them both in the same emotional state, they'll sort of cope each other into convincing each other to buy this call. If they say, okay, well, we're going to go and discuss this and we need some time to talk about this amongst ourselves, what you do is you say, hey, of course, I expected that to happen. What I'm going to do is mute myself. I'm going to go make a cup of tea. I'll be back in 5 minutes and then we can move forward or not, depending on your discussion. How does that sound? And you put them on the pressure. I use that to close so many business partners on the same call. Just as simple as like, yeah, no worries. I understand you're probably going to want to discuss this yourselves. So I'm going to go make a cup of tea. I'll be back in 5 minutes and then we can discuss what you've discussed. And then by that point, because you've led the call, they usually just say, oh, okay, right, no worries. And then they mute themselves and go off and have this chat. And then you sort of leave the room and then come back in 5. And then you say, okay, guys, so what have you discussed? And then by that point, they're going to either have objections or they're going to say they want to move forward. If they have objections, then you go through it in exactly the same way you'd expect. But what is really important to understand is with these business partners is that they're each going to have their own objections. And so you need to understand when these objections come up, who was the root of the objection. Because what will often happen is the business partners won't be unified on the objection. It'll be one person with one concern that the other person is kind of on board with, but doesn't really care about. And so when they give you the objection, you have to say, okay, John and Steve, that's absolutely great point. Which one of you brought that up? Like who's the most concerned about that? And then what you do is you handle the objection to that person. And the other person just kind of watches, if that makes sense. And then, you work through the other objections. But don't panic. It's exactly what you'd usually do, but just sort of twice. If that makes sense. Oliver says, why am I visiting the problem and solution validation sheet only 14 days after conducting interviews and research? Should I wait until the end of 60 days or near the end when I've got enough intel? Well, not really, man, because if like within like 14 days, if you've got enough information, you don't need to wait 60 days, but if you've got enough information after 14 days to feel like you've got a solid problem, then you can start building around that. But it might change and the solution that you offer might be adjusted slightly as you do more research. It's iterative, so it's not binary. Best book I've read, Discourses by Epictetus. Yaf says, hey, Charlie, I'll invest in Easy Grow. I was sending outreaches consistently, but only landed one interview. Should I complete my 30 interviews before building my methodology? As I'm aware of the problem my niche suffers from. Well, I mean, I don't know how long you've been doing outreaches for and how consistently for, man, but if you've got to think about this, man. Like, if you can't land interviews, how are you going to land client sales calls? Like I would try and get a few more interviews done before you do your methodology. Like, you're sending outreaches. Are you making cold calls? Are you like being creative with your approach? I try and get a few more interviews before you start building this out, to be honest with you. If you're aware of the problem and you know what the solution is, then by all means you can start, but I would try and get more interviews as well. Does listen to podcasts whilst doing a task that doesn't demand focus kill attention? Yes, it does. When you listen to podcasts whilst doing all of your like normal tasks, you basically kind of train your brain to be doing two things at once, and you train your brain to need this sort of extra stimulus, which is not particularly conducive to productivity at all. So I wouldn't do that. Yeah, you should find a way to do more calls, man. But I don't know specifically what that is. Great question from Laura here. I'm currently working a high income 9 to 5. I work evenings and weekends on my business growth. What revenue should someone be quitting and going full time, especially in the case of high W2 income? Should we be aiming percentage of income replacement? If you're making 500K and 9 to 5, you probably wait until a certain amount before doing. Well, I mean, this depends. This entirely depends on your situation and how much money you need and what responsibilities you have and how much money you want to live off of. I would ask, like, if it was me, let's say I was making like 250K a year in a high income 9 to 5. I'd start by asking myself, like, how much salary do I actually need to live and have my basic needs met, whilst also tending to my responsibilities and taking care of the people that I love in a way that is adequate in what I do right now. And I'd look at it and be like, okay, well, I'd probably need to make like 80K a year to do that. And what I would then do is be like, okay, well, until I'm making 80K a year, I'm not going to quit my job. That's kind of how I would structure it. The way that I did this with my apprenticeship, I was only making like £2,000 to £3,000 a month. And I told myself that I could quit my apprenticeship once I was making double that, which is basically where I was by the end of the apprenticeship. So it's entirely up to you. So yeah. Is it worth starting a YouTube channel as a beginner and posting videos on topics I learned? It seems without having trust and brand, it'll be impossible to get clients in the near future. Definitely not impossible to get clients without a brand, man. There's loads of people that make 8 figures, multi 8 figures without brands. Yeah, you can do that for sure. Do VSLs still work? Yes, they do. What should I do about this or overcome this? Just get to work, man. I'm afraid of what my family will think of hearing me in my room cold calling, being a businessman and starting a business. My family judges entrepreneurs and cold callers. I'm also afraid of what my family will think of me if I'm starting a business, and I'm scared to tell them. This is what's stopping me from conducting the cold calling and researching calls. Well, this is just resistance, man. This is just pussy shit. And this is just you being a pussy, man. It's just you being some scaredy cat kid, like, grow up. And I mean that with the utmost love and respect, but they're not going to change. They're not going to change their judgments. You just have to become more stoic and more, tough. Like, so what if your family judges you? So what if people tell you that you're going to fail? So what if your family's like, oh, you're being a bad person? Like, you kind of just have to fucking get over that, man, and see that for exactly what it is, which is just resistance. Why do you give a fuck? Why do you care? Your family's going to judge you. They're going to, so what? There's nothing you should do about it to overcome it. You should basically just get on with it and stop worrying about being judged, and recognize your fear of being judged is purely just resistance. And it's just basically, what you learned in trial by fire, man. So I really wouldn't worry about it, just get on with it, basically. A lot of people make excuses and they'll come up with all sorts of bullshit reasons to not do things, and worrying about what your friends or your family think is a perfect example of that, man. Like, you might be surprised as well. They might not actually judge you as much as you might think. You probably cooked it up to be way bigger in your head. So yeah, honestly. What does your daily routine look like? I wake up at typically like 7 a.m. and then I'm at work at 7:15. Then I work till like 7 p.m., watch a movie and go to sleep. And that's pretty much it. And I'll go to the gym in the evenings if I want to. Beyond that, there's no sort of routine. So what books can you suggest to be able to think in systems? Probably Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows. What does your diet look like? Red meat, blueberries, avocado, and beef tallow. That's basically it. I already picked a niche and made some progress in it, but I keep thinking about switching because I'm worried about the long-term vision or mission in life, or my end goal in life, and I'm picking the right niche for that. So should I worry about picking my niche based on my long-term vision or mission in life, or should I stick with the one I've already picked, scale that first, and then start worrying about my long-term? Yeah, you kind of need to cover the short-term before you can think about the long-term, man. So I would strongly suggest that you just stick to the current one you've got and not worry about the future. Charlie, how do you keep your relationship live? How do you keep your relationship alive if almost all you do is work and have little cognitive power left for other stuff? Well, it's just about finding someone that's okay with that, pretty much. And only partnering with someone or being in a romantic relationship with someone who expects you to work pretty much all the time. So like with my girlfriend, we don't really have, we do like a date like once a week, and then that's pretty much it. And she's fine with that, and she doesn't really care that I work 80 to 90 hours a week. And that's really the only way to get it done, man, is to find someone that doesn't care. Not doesn't care, but has less care for it. AJ says, which mastermind client are you most thankful for? Please note, only one of your current clients has a picture with Uncle Sam Owens. Yeah, my favorite mastermind clients would have to be AJ Gonzalez. There's no two ways about that. Oh, yeah, that's funny. Okay. How to source your first lead list? Yeah, just manually on Google is a good option, man. Or you can use lead list finders like D7 Lead Finder or something, but it's niche specific, so I'm not sure. Lucas says, a lead answered this to my cold email campaign. How much is something like this for you to build out? I'm in Costa Rica right now, so I can't do a call. Will you send a Loom overview or something? That would be great. Should I even invest the time if his reception is not good enough to do a call? If yes, how would you structure the Loom in general? How would you handle this? I would reply to this and basically say like, hey man, what I would do is I'd send a Loom that gives him very little information on how it actually works. So it'd be a very quick Loom being like, hey, name. So I'm just making this quick 1-2 minute Loom for you to kind of give you a very brief overview of how this is worked and how it's structured. I know that you asked for pricing. We can't really give that to you without understanding the business, because it would be, it would be diagnosis before exploration, blah, 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 blah. You can find a way to sort of not position the price. And then basically just sort of give him like a really broad overview of how it works and sort of give him a quick demo. And then just say, if you want to talk about how this works and you're interested, then we can book a call. And that's pretty much it. Just basically a 2-minute Loom giving a very high level overview, a little bit more detail than you gave in the original email, alluding to the fact you can't give the price because you don't understand his business yet. And then just a CTA to book a call. And then just follow up on him relentlessly. And, try and cold call him and stuff if you can as well. What type of sales apprenticeship do you recommend to get alongside growing a business through Imperium Academy? If you can get a sales apprenticeship and that's the route you want to go down, then you can, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, even though it was what I did. I only kind of did it because I didn't have much of a choice. So yeah. When should I raise my prices? That's a great question. Generally speaking, once your conversion rate is north of like 25%, and you're collecting 100% of the initial retainer on every call. So like if you're charging 2K a month, then all of your deals are 2K a month deals. And if you're converting over like 25%, then generally speaking, you're going to want to increase your prices by like 10 to 20% at a time until your conversion rates come down to 15 to 20%. That's kind of the sweet spot. And the better thing to do though is not to raise your prices, but to actually condense them. So what you would do is you start selling 90-day packages or 180-day packages, and you'd sell them in like a PIF. So let's say that you're doing like 2K a month for 6-month contracts. Then what you would do instead is start selling like 12K deals. And it's like a 12K up front for 6 months. And it's kind of a better way to get the cash than just to increase your prices, because you'll make more money that way. And you'll get more cash, you can spend more on ads, etc., etc. Pablo, I answered this question earlier, man. Yes, I think it is a large enough market to get to 1 to 3 mil a year. Is Faceless YouTube channels a scam? No, I don't think so. Would you recommend EasyGrow 2.0 to a beginner agency owner? If you can afford it, absolutely. It will just make you more successful faster. David says, I picked entrepreneur. I'm just going to take a screenshot of this real quick. I need to ask my team about this. I started my entrepreneurial journey with IA and picked medtech startups as my niche. My offer was I help medtech startups secure funding on a pay and results basis. Because funding was the one issue they kept mentioning during research calls and has to do with their lack of time marketing skills. I went to call for EasyGrow, but I was told not a good fit for the market I serve. What can I do to be a better fit? Or should I pick a different niche or problem? And how would I know if I'm eligible for EasyGrow? Let me look into why this got cancelled, David, and we'll get back to you. Because it doesn't sound like you're not a fit. There might be some nuance to why you were cancelled beyond beyond that. So I'll have a look into it and let you know, or have a team member let you know. Charlie, I just spent 5 days on researching critical information. Let me tell you, this is one of the most rewarding action items on the program until now, and I can't wait to copy the shit out of my competitors. You're welcome, man. No problem. How can I stay in the course consistently? I tend to drive off the lane really badly, and I don't know why. I'm at week 2. Will it answer all my questions on how to stay consistent with the program and the thoughts of I can't do this? So first of all, man, like if you can't stay on the track consistently, man, you don't deserve to be successful. And it's really as simple as that. Like, I'm not here to tell you about like how to want it. Like, if you can't do it and you don't want it and you can't do it consistently, then it's not going to work. And there's nothing that I can say or nothing that anyone can say that will save you from yourself in that self-sabotage. But if you go through week 2 and you do that properly, then it will explain all of the reasons as to where that resistance comes from and why you consistently fall off. But you just have to not fall off before you get to that lesson, if that makes sense. So I would keep going. Do you look so sad because you're talking to us Muppets? No, I'm not sad. I'm just incredibly tired. But I'm sure you guys can forgive the slightly more monotone live stream today. I'm running on fumes, so to speak, but I'm still showing up for you guys and answering the questions. And I hope you can forgive my slight lack of energy today. This is the thing about live streams, is it's like with making YouTube videos, like you can record YouTube videos and make content, and you can record course content and program content when you have the energy to do so, and when you have like a really high sort of vibe about you. But live streams happen routinely scheduled, and so they can catch you however you feel. And that can be like, super like, I'm all on top of the world, I'm like really happy, or they can catch you in the middle of like a huge work block and just being really exhausted. And so yeah, that's kind of why sometimes these live streams can seem a little bit more like, a bit tiring or a bit monotonal. Hussein says, what's up with the pen? I don't know, man. I like to talk with something in my hand. I've always done that. When are you embracing the baldness? I don't know, man. It's going to happen at some point. I'm probably going to be bald by 30. So I reckon I've got like 2 or 3 more years before it starts getting really bad. The hairline it's staying strong, but it's starting to recede up top here, which is usually where the problem tends to stem from. So I guess we will see. Charlie, what's your height and weight? I'm 6'2" and 80 kilos. That's my height and weight. 188 centimeters and about 80 kilograms. And I don't know what my body fat percentage is. It's relatively low, but I'm not sure. A lot of people like when they meet me, like in the mastermind, is they kind of they get confused about how tall I am, because they're so used to like seeing me like sat in a chair, or like just sort of like sitting in the in the chair and just sort of like looking like you don't really know how notice how tall someone is until you actually meet them in person. And so quite a lot of people are surprised by that, I suppose. Lux says, don't let that bother you, you're gorgeous. I appreciate that, thank you. I'm sure someone hasn't. My mum's made an account and she's proxying someone else's account here. That'd be hilarious. What's up, Jerry? How's it going, man? It's Mr. Douglas. Hussein says you need to looks max ASAP. I've always thought looks maxing this is an interest. Let's have this conversation, guys. Like, I've always thought that looks maxing is an incredibly feminine thing to do, because when you look at like women and what women do, they are pretty big looks maxers. But when I look at any man that I look up to, any man, not a single one has made an attempt to looks max, with the one exception of Elon Musk getting a hairline transplant. Like, I think that, when you sort of come to realize that as a guy, your primary measurements of status in society and attractiveness to the opposite sex hinge entirely upon your achievements, not the shape of your jaw or the color of your eyebrows or anything. I think the only form of looks maxing that would be appropriate for a man is being somewhat muscular, or at least being in like good shape. But I feel like that's not looks maxing, that's just health maxing. And it's not about looking good, it's about looking healthy. And you can signal to other people that you have some level of discipline, but the actual like concept of looks maxing and spending time and money on improving how you look is an incredibly feminine thing to do. And I'm not saying it's a wrong thing to do. I'm just saying that there's not a single role model in my life, billionaire or otherwise, who has actually spent time doing that. So I appreciate the suggestion. And, I know a lot of people are saying that looks maxing is gay. But I think that, I think there's lots of men that try to maximize their looks that aren't homosexual. But it's certainly not the most masculine thing to do in a roundabout way. Is it gay gifting your girlfriend flowers? No, I'd probably argue that's one of the most straight things you can do. So I don't know. Aside from landing clients, this is from Adiel here. I love this question. Aside from landing clients, what do you think is the biggest challenge that new agency owners run into? Probably keeping their mind in track, man. Like it's the biggest struggle that everyone has at the beginning is keeping themselves on the rails and keeping themselves, on the straight and narrow and staying disciplined. But if you're talking about business challenges specifically, probably energy, like keeping yourself energized and not burning out. At the beginning, like that's the big one. But new agency owners, I suppose energy is a problem. There's only really 3 problems that you can face that will stop you from growing. And that's appointment booking, sales calls, conducting, and delivering results. That's it. So those are the only 3 things that can hold you back. So does anyone here actually do looks maxing? And if so, like, what do you do to do it? Like, I'm really curious. Like, what actually is like a looks maxing thing that people do? Because I heard about this thing where like some guys will like darken their eyebrows or some shit, but like, what does anyone actually do that indicates looks maxing? What's that thing that you do where you like open your mouth really wide, make your jaw look better or something? Thumb pulling, bone smash, grooming, chain smoking. What the hell is thumb pulling and what's bone smashing? I gotta Google this shit. What is bone smashing? What is bone smashing? You can reshape your facial bones through blunt force. Smashing your facial bones with a hammer. People will go to some weird lengths, man. That's the kind of shit that women do, man. I'm telling you, like girls will like that whole like idea that, beauty is pain and all that stuff. Like, why don't we just let the women do the things with the needles and the doctors and the tools? Like, I don't get this looks maxing thing, man, because it's like, if you want to appear more attractive and if you want to appear, because let's be real about looks maxing for a second here. Like the real reason that anyone's going to be looks maxing is specifically to appear more attractive to members of the opposite sex. That's probably almost always 90% of the reason as to why people looks max. And the problem, I'm going to make a YouTube video about this, because the problem that men have is they project their perception of dating onto women. So for guys, we value looks in women significantly. For women, they value status, they value resources, okay, and safety, right, and protection. So what happens is a lot of guys are like, okay, well, I want a girl that's pretty, which means that a girl is going to want a guy that's pretty. And they just forget that there's this like massive barrier between men and women that separates exactly what men and women want from relationships. Like a woman would much rather a man who is a 6 out of 10 on the just an average looking guy who is, making multi 6 figures, emotionally mature, has healed his trauma and has some charisma and is a little funny and basically just has his shit together. She'd rather a 6 out of 10 guy that is successful and secure who can look after her for the long term than a 9 out of 10 guy that is just making like 20K a year. Now, that doesn't mean to say that she wouldn't necessarily want to sleep with the guy who's a 9 out of 10 for a short period of time, but she's never going to see him as a long-term partner with, any level of longevity to the relationship. And so like if your objective is just to have as much sex as possible, casual sex, then maybe looks maxing is the way forward. But in my experience, men that are focused on their commercial success and their emotional maturity tend to do far better in short and long-term relationships than men that just look handsome. So I really just I just think that I just think looks maxing is a bit of a waste of time. Anyway, let's get back to business, shall we? It's always fun to, yeah. Good question here from Louis. At what point in your financial journey did you realize that money could no longer carry the meaning? Yeah, okay. So when money lost its meaning for me, when I realized that I had enough money in the bank to live my initial dream lifestyle for the rest of my life without working another day. So my initial goal with my business when I was 18, 19 years old was to passively make 10K a month and with just passive investments and never to make 100K a year and never having to work again. That was my initial goal. And, you know, after grinding for a couple of years, once you've got, how much was it, like 4 or 5 mil liquid or something? Yeah, about, give or take. Like, well, once you've got like 2-3 mil liquid, that becomes a possibility. And that happened after a couple of years in business. And at that point, I was like, shit, I've got everything that I need coming to me. And that's when money became less of a, past that point, it became a lot less about making more money, at least specifically for my like personal gains and stuff. When it really became true was when the assets that I had could support a 30-40K a month passive income. Because then I was like, shit, even with like an extended family and charitable investments and taking care of my family's needs and having enough money to deal with basically any problem that could exist health-wise or otherwise, insurance, whatever the hell, like that's when money lost its meaning. From like, it didn't lose its meaning. It just, it developed a new meaning, because initially the meaning of money is about yourself. It's a very self-absorbed thing. It's about buying more things for yourself, being more comfortable for yourself. But once you've achieved that and it's satiated in its entirety, provided you don't just go and put it all on black and gamble it all away and lose it, it then becomes about building something bigger, building like a team, like trying to like fix a big problem in the market, helping loads of people. It's part of the reason why Academy is free, because, you know, I don't need the money and I can help a lot of people. And so, yeah, that's kind of what it's about. And then money becomes more about a sort of measurement of your competence. Well, it's always a measurement of your competence, but it becomes a lot less about like just trying to work for yourself and more about just trying to like do something cool or build something, basically. It becomes less about building a life and more about like building an empire or a business. Julia says, do you have a plan to move to the US? Yes, probably. It wouldn't surprise me with the current political and economic climate of the United Kingdom if I was to explore moving to the United States in the near to distant future. There are a lot of tax and political changes and implications that really do de-incentivize being a millionaire in the UK, which is a real shame because I love this country and I'm proud to be British. But it is something that could potentially be on the cards in the future because, yeah, like, you know, most of the people that I look up to from a business perspective are American and are in that sort of American environment and market, you know. So, you know, there's that. Would you agree that we live in a capitalistic system that supports the top 1% at the expense of the other 90%? Well, that's an incredibly philosophical question. I think what you have to realize is that the top 1% built the system that supports the 90%. And so all of the poor people who don't like rich people live in an infrastructure and a society built by rich people. All of their healthcare, all of their, like, anything, any benefit in their life came as a result of capitalism. So you know, all the infrastructure, the emergency services, the road services, the railways, the oil, the steel, the house they live in, everything that they benefit from in the first world or in modern society has been built by rich people. And so I think it's incredibly short-sighted and irresponsible to point the finger to people who basically created one of the most prosperous and advantageous and safe societies in history, quite literally, towards the people that built that. And I think that the top 1%, and I think that rich people deserve to be rich because they've added value. And I also think that it's an inevitability because capitalism is an extension of biology and evolution. You know, it's about competition. It's about scale. It's about monopoly. And these are just phenomenons that exist in any ecosystem naturally. And human beings are an extension of the natural world and of biology. And so, you know, we are no different in theory than a colony of ants or, you know, a specific species of animal in a rainforest. Like those who are the most, it's not it's not the strongest or the fittest that survive, but those most adaptable to the environment in which they find themselves in. And so the people who are the top 1%, the rich people, the capitalists, the business people, they are adaptable to the economic machine and therefore they do better. And that's just the conditions of the market. And so I don't think that poor people live at the expense of rich people, because everyone, in my opinion, has the opportunity to get rich, but they just choose to play the victim card because it's less painful and requires less work. So, yeah. Could one not argue that the Great Reset is also natural? Yeah, it definitely is, man. Look at any empire in the history of the world. They all fall apart. Like every single empire and from antiquity to modern history has boomed and collapsed. And that's basically like a synonym for the Great Reset. Happened with the British Empire, you know, for all of our, you know, malevolent, evil colonizing faults, we owned 38% or something like that of the world's landmass, but our empire is falling apart before our eyes. You know, the Roman Empire fell apart, the Mongolian Empire fell apart, the French Empire fell apart for as long as it lasted, which wasn't very long. And so all economic machines collapse. It's entropy. All systems die. And so the Great Reset, from a financial perspective in the modern age, is absolutely going to happen, and it will come. You know, we see these things, we see little symptoms of these things with the 2008 financial collapse, with the dot-com bubble. We'll see it with the AI. Well, there'll be an AI bubble where it collapses. The dollar will crash. Like, you guys have to understand that, like, economic machines, they can't just print money forever and ever. The dollar will collapse. Bitcoin might improve, and that's not a conspiracy. That's just the truth. Look at every other currency that's ever existed, and they've all gone to shit. Like, the only constant of history is change. And so just because we live in unprecedented economic times, it doesn't change the underpinning rules that we have to abide by and live by. And so I think that we're really going to be in for some interesting economic times over the course of the next couple of years, probably the next 10 to 20 years. And I don't think there'll be a great reset for, you know, decades, but it's going to happen, and it's definitely a natural occurrence. So yeah, in the same way that, like, forest fires are inevitable and natural, you know, they just happen. The same way that tsunamis happen, you know, like the economic machine is an extension of the biological rules of life, and therefore resets and, you know, natural disasters are going to happen. Abdul has a good question here, saying, how should you handle a situation where you and your partner make different decisions about the same issue? Well, the key to, okay, I've had my business partnership with my business partner, Bo, we're coming up on our 8th year. And in that time, Bo and I have never had a single argument. We've never shouted at each other. We've never stonewalled each other. We've never fallen out, not once, ever. And that is incredibly rare. And I attribute the success and peacefulness of our partnership to two things. First of all, we both want the same thing. And so when we disagree on something, our answers to, our decisions on how to handle a situation are both with the same incentive in mind, which is moving the company forward and solving the problem and being successful. Bo and I have a rule in our discussions of things in business. When we are, the rule is simple. I'm allowed to attack his ideas without him feeling personally attacked. He's allowed to attack my ideas without me feeling personally attacked. And when we started our partnership, we kind of had this agreement, verbal agreement of, we kind of said to each other, anything that we suggest should be scrutinized and attacked with full ferocity if the other person disagrees with it. And the other person who's receiving that sacrifices any, what would you call it, any permission to get upset. And so because of this, Bo and I are able to have completely differing opinions on the same situation, but we are able to find the right answer because we will completely tear each other apart for our ideas without getting upset. The second that either of you get upset is the second that the conversation is no longer about what is best for your business, but it is about what is best for your ego and defending your own idea. So whenever you present an idea to your business partner, detach your ego from that idea and send that idea forward in the conversation in the same way that a general would send a soldier forward. You don't care if he lives or dies, he is cannon fodder. It's just an idea, it's not you. That's how if you do that and remove your ego from the idea you present, and then your business partner does the same thing, then what you both can do is attack these ideas without attacking each other. And so that's how you handle a situation where you have different decisions about the same issue. If you involve your ego, then deep trouble time will happen and you're going to have a bad time. This is another question from Louis. Sam Alvin said in one of his videos that you have to work 80% on the product and 20% on marketing. What would you recommend to do in our situation? Well, you've got to realize that our product is marketing because we work in the internet marketing space. And so it really depends, man, because for me, for example, right now, all of my products are in a good space and I pay a small team of people a full-time income with revenue share in the company to work on my product. I have a product manager and I have a R&D team. And so I've got someone or a small team of people who are very intelligent and understand the industry very well, whose entire job is literally to just make the products better. And so I don't really have to worry about the products anymore. So I can focus all my time on marketing. But at the beginning of your journey, you kind of need to do both. And the only way for you to really win in the long term is to focus entirely on the product. However, if your goal is to get to 10, 20K a month, then you don't necessarily need to spend as much time. But at the beginning of your journey, you should spend 100% of your time on your marketing. Because the thing is the only way you can improve your product is through feedback from customers. And so what happens is the marketing is actually R&D and product development, expense. Because if you spend an hour getting a customer and that customer then gives you feedback to improve your product, which it always will, then by getting that customer, you improve your product. And so you can't just work on your product. You have to acquire customers, listen to what they say about your product, and then apply that feedback to develop it. And in the beginning of your journey for the first year or two, you're never going to be able to spend 80% of your time on the product because you're not going to have enough feedback to do that. And so you have to just sort of consider that and bear that in mind. Pablo says, what drains your energy during the day? Or do you manage to stay focused on business all the time? But I'll answer this again from the question of someone who's beginning because it will be more applicable to you guys. The only thing that should drain your energy is outreach, sales calls, and client delivery. There shouldn't be anything else that you do in your life ever to get the 10K a month or 20K a month or 50K a month or even 100K a month. 100K and 50K a little trickier because it becomes about managing people, building SOPs. But yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Wait for a good question to come in here. This is a good one. From Ridges, I don't know how to pronounce that, but hey, is it smart to run client acquisition ads in December, given that many businesses slow down or close for the holidays? It absolutely is, man, because a lot of people slow their ads down, which means that you can basically get more bang for your buck. And then what you can start doing is everyone will tell you that they're going to delay the decision until January. But what this does is you can start building your sales pipeline for January, and you can be top of mind for all these people for when January starts. Because basically, it's very, very rare for business owners to make purchasing decisions for growth at the end of the year. The reason is because they're winding down, it's Christmas, people aren't buying as much, blah, 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 blah. So you talk to them, you get them on the call, and then you tee them up for an onboarding in January. And because of that, you'll have a massive pipeline. You'll be way ahead of everybody else, and you can secure a bunch of clients at the very beginning of the year and be much further ahead than most people would be. So yeah. Juan says, Charlie, now that you've achieved financial success, did you find that wealth has genuinely improved your happiness, or did it change your life in ways that you didn't expect? That's a good question. I would argue that wealth has definitely made me a happier person. And I'm definitely happier being a wealthy person than a broke person. However, there is a point of diminishing returns where more money just genuinely does not mean more happiness. So, with the amount of money that I have liquid available to me, if I wanted to, with my current lifestyle, I could never work again. And, the investments I have, they afford me luxuries, and they afford me to be very generous to people I love, and to take my family on expensive fun holidays, and to treat my girlfriend in a way that makes her really happy. And this is really interesting because what will happen once you get to a certain level of wealth is you'll derive more happiness and meaning from using your wealth to make other people that you love happy. And so then you can start taking financial responsibility for those close to you, and that will make you happy. It's never about spending the money on yourself, because I'm not going to be any happier if I have a more expensive car or a bigger apartment to live in. There comes a point where I already live in a very luxurious apartment in West London, in a very fancy part of London. I've got air conditioning. I've got a fuck off massive apartment with 3 bedrooms, and I've got a penthouse, and I've got the car I always wanted to drive when I was younger. There's not much more that I need from a personal perspective. I've got my dream relationship sorted. I've got a great social life. I've got the most expensive golf clubs, and I can afford to take boxing lessons when I want, or golf lessons when I want. I can afford to buy any book I want, or have any, if I want to buy something for my biohacking, I'll do it. So there comes a point where you get everything that you want and ever needed. And for you to derive happiness from your money, it becomes about 2 things. It becomes about being kind and generous to people that you love and people that matter to you, and taking responsibility for them. And then it also becomes about building stuff that's cool, and a sense of conquer, a sense of actually sort of winning and, dominating and really destroying your competition, picking a market and just being number one. That's better than fucking anything. I'd rather be number one in my industry than have a new exhaust or a fancy Rolex or anything. Sean says, what's the best way to remove an excessive ego? That's a fantastic question, man. And asking that question indicates to me that you're incredibly self-aware, and you're already halfway there to removing any sort of ego that you have. The easiest way to remove an excessive ego is to realize and understand that the majority of ideas that you have are potentially wrong, and you can sometimes make observations, often, that will not measure the true objective nature of the world, and that sometimes your decisions will be incorrect and wrong. That's really the best thing. It's having this sort of sense of awareness that you are often wrong. And that's the easiest way to sort of realize it, is dude, when I look back at some of the decisions that I've made, some of the things that I've said, some of the things that I've done, I've been wrong so many times. But the only reason that I've achieved some level of success is because I've recognized when I'm wrong, and I'll work on it and progress. So yeah. Charlie, I disagree with you. Poor people are smart. They are just poor. I'm not sure what you're disagreeing with me on, man, but I respect your disagreement. You're more than welcome to. Hey, Charlie, how do you deal with complacency now that you've got the success? I don't see myself as successful because, okay, this is important for you guys. If any of you ever struggle with complacency, remember this, what I'm about to say. As a human being, you're going to have what we would call measures of success. And that is basically your perception of what success means. And so for a lot of you watching right now, what does success look like? It might look like being financially free, having passive income, having a car, having a house, having a watch, etc., etc. And how successful you feel you are is dependent upon how much of that you've achieved. And once you've achieved that, you will become complacent because your perception of success has been fulfilled. So once you have something, you no longer need to work to get it, which means that you no longer need to work. And so the easiest way to overcome complacency is to drastically change your perception of what success looks like. And so to me, being a multimillionaire or an 8-figure entrepreneur or having a nice lifestyle and being financially free is not success. It's just a baseline standard that I wouldn't accept anything less than. I don't see myself as successful because I don't measure my success against the acquisition of personal wealth. And so I measure success against dominating an industry, building $1 billion company, building hundreds of millions of dollars worth of valuation, and building like a proper sort of business empire and being number one. And so that's my measurement of success is no longer about the personal acquisition of wealth because I've done that and I've got enough money to basically do whatever the fuck I want for the rest of my life. And so if that was all I thought what success was, then I'd have no motivation or will to really work or do anything. So as soon as I sort of acquired that, I started changing my perception of success towards dominating and conquering. And that's when you really start to get into the big leagues and you start to really start competing with proper people and stuff. Guys, I'm going to go and take a quick 2-minute break here, run to the bathroom and fill my water bottle up. I'm really enjoying answering these questions, specifically in the chat. So we're going to keep these questions going, but I'll be back in about 2 minutes and you can talk amongst yourselves. And any attempt to convince me that my microphone is muted will not be appreciated like last time. I will not fall for that again. Right, I'll be back in 2 minutes, guys. Crack on. Did you all enjoy that talk amongst yourselves? I'm not falling for the muted shit this time, guys. You got me with that once. That was enough for me. Do I still live with Bo? No, I don't live with Bo. I'm not falling for the muted stuff. It's not happening. What advice would you give to a 23-year-old? Oh. What advice would you give to a 23-year-old who is ambitious but lazy? Recognize that you're not actually ambitious, because ambitious people work. And what you're doing is you're creating a coping mechanism with your identity to justify your laziness. Because if all you were was lazy, you'd be nothing. And so what you're doing is you're basically telling yourself that you are someone when you're not really anything. You're not ambitious. If you're lazy, you're not ambitious by definition. And if you're ambitious, then you're not lazy, because those two things simply cannot go hand in hand. True ambition, people who are actually ambitious are desperately determined to achieve their goals, and they are transcendental, they are magnetic, they are on a fucking mission. That's not a lazy person. You can't really be both at the same time. And so you're not ambitious, man. If you're lazy, you're not. And if you think you are, then all you're doing is just constructing some little identity to cope with the fact that you don't want to do anything. What's one trait that you noticed all the people you look up to share? Non-binary thinking, without question. Like the most common, one of the most common things, because this is the thing, is like when you think about a trait, like there's lots of there's a difference between character traits and personality traits, like extroversion or orderliness or discipline or anything like that, or waking up early or habits. There's hundreds of those traits and different ways of achieving success. But the one thing that's pretty universal between all successful people is the mental comprehension mechanism that they use to develop and see the world. And so one of the core things behind that is non-binary thinking. And what that basically is it's an ability to think in terms of contrast and think in, like, it's called grayscale thinking, where you don't see things so black and white. And so, when people ask questions like, hey, like, at what point of income should I move out? And then my answer is always, well, it depends. Like, people who think non-binary never apply binary rules to situations. They always think it depends. And if you're wondering how to think like that, you can just go and watch Polarity Paradoxes in week 2 of the Academy. Because in week 2, I kind of explain, like, you kind of need to be able to contradict yourself, and you need to be able to be sort of two different versions of things. But yeah, that's probably the most common trait. And once you start being able to do it, and you sort of develop that skill, you'll start to see it everywhere. Like everyone who is successful in their speech and the way they think, you'll be like, oh. We got this question from Lux Life, who's asking, can I make it by cold emailing? How do you get around GDPR or spam? Well, there's a difference between cold calling and cold emailing. If you're calling businesses, you shouldn't have a spam issue. If you're calling consumers, then you might have a spam issue. But I can tell you that I have sent God knows how many hundreds of thousands of cold emails in my life, and made God knows how many hundreds of thousands of cold calls in my life, and sent God knows how many. I've probably done a million outreaches across cold DMs, cold emails, cold calls to every imaginable Western country on the planet. And not once have I ever had a spam or GDPR complaint issue or legal problem, ever. That's not to say that you won't, and that's not legal advice, but I never have. And it's not a concern for me at all. Compost says, what's your opinion on the London crime situation? Because on one hand, I hear people telling stories about how they got attacked with knives. And on the other hand, people are fully rejecting the idea. Well, you've got to realize, man, that like there is an incentive and a bias towards negativity. And there's no question that there's crime in London, but I can tell you that I've lived here for 6 months, 7 months now. And the only crime that I've seen is someone having their backpack stolen in a restaurant. That's it. Everyone likes to make it all dramatic and make it sound awful. And there's definitely crime here, and there's definitely knife crime, and it's, gang related. There's no two ways about that. There's a lot of thieves, and a lot of people will steal phones and stuff, but it's a city, man. Like, crime is pretty normal. And yes, I do live in one of the richest areas in London. The borough of London, there's two boroughs of London with really low crime rates. You've got Richmond, and you've got the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. I live in the second one, and it has the second lowest crime rate in London, which obviously helps. If I lived in another borough of London, I'm sure that the situation would be different. The thing about London is everyone shits on London, and everyone says that London is a terrible place to live. But I can tell you that if you can afford it and you have good money to live in the really nice areas, then it's a really great place to live. So it's kind of like a money issue. Like if you live in like a really shitty area of London, then you're probably going to have a pretty shitty time because there's lots of crime in those areas. But if you can afford to live in nice places, then it's great. Have you seen any celebrities in London? Yeah, I've seen a few celebrities. There's a lot of people who are celebrities at the gym that I go to, some of the social events that I attend and stuff as well. A lot of YouTubers and stuff like that. There's another thing that you guys will have to be wary of as well. Is like the social aspect of being successful. Is you can start getting behind like doors. You can start befriending like the big YouTubers and like the sort of Instagram famous people and the influencers and stuff, and you get invited to these things, but that can become an incredibly distracting thing. So I just be aware of that as you become successful. You don't want to expand your social circle too much, unless they're making a load of money. I made friends recently with someone who's got a B2B software worth 400 million. And we went for dinner the other day and I was asking a bunch of questions about it. That's the kind of person that you want to make friends with, not some, football YouTuber who's got 2 million subscribers, Hey, Charlie, can we sell Easy Grow and consulting as a done-for-you service to the consulting industry? Well, technically not, no, because you can't just resell Easy Grow, but you can always use it as inspiration to, fulfill on services. And any ideas that you take, as long as you credit them to us and don't copy them word for word, then you're in the green. But you can't just copy it and then resell it, because you'd probably get in a lot of trouble. What's a good book to read to improve grayscale thinking? Do you know what? I've never actually read a book on non-binary thinking. Just go and watch there's a YouTube video by Sam Ovens called The Genius of Contradiction. I watched that every week for about 2 years. I kid you not, I watched that video about 100 times. When I was like 19, 20, 21 years old, I'd go for a really long 10 to 15 kilometer run every Sunday in the same route around like my local village from where I grew up. And The Genius of Contradiction, I think it's like an hour and it's like an hour long, like an hour and 15 minutes long, by Sam Ovens. And I listened to that because my run was exactly about an hour long, hour and 50 minutes. And so I listened to that on my run for every week for 2 years. And by the end of that, I was able to think in non-binary terms because it was embedded into my brain. I could recite that video word for word. Like in the beginning of the video where he starts talking about like Mike Tyson and all these things, and I can just remember it all, all the way down to, anyway, I won't get into it, but. Hey, Charlie. Not this question. Can the info and Imperium help me with ecom and drop shipping? If so, can it help me with? I don't know, man. I've never seen anyone use this information for ecom and drop shipping, so I don't know. It's not built for drop shippers. You know, the niche immersion stuff will probably be helpful and stuff, but honestly, man, I'm not. Probably the iterative renaissance, the mindset module, without question. Other than that, I don't think much else will be of use. So like week 1, week 2, basically. How long should I be reading the Sales Transcendence readings? I found I need more than 45 to 60 minutes. Is that too much? Yeah, that's way too much, man. I used to be able to read mine in like 15 minutes. Like what I would do is I'd like, you flick through the vision board, you do some visualizations there, and then you spend like, the main thing is the affirmations, those belief statements. Getting those done is the main thing. I would do it twice a day, and each time would take me about 15 to 20 minutes. So it was like average 30 minutes a day, all in twice a day. And the majority of that time was literally just to do with the affirmations. So yeah. Yeah, in the morning and before bed. Cool. All right, guys. Well, we're going to wrap up the live stream here, hour and a half in. I know that we didn't really answer many school questions today, but to be honest, we might just from here on out stick to the YouTube, because a lot of the questions in here just aren't that accurate. And honestly, guys, some of these questions just aren't that critical, to be completely honest. So I think moving forward, we're probably going to focus more on the chat, because it feels way more engaging, and it feels way more spontaneous. And honestly, for me, it's a lot more fun and exciting. Like for you guys, do you prefer it? I mean, this is obviously for you guys. Do you prefer it when I answer questions in school, or when we're more interactive in YouTube and we kind of let it unfold based on what people say in the chat? Because I find the school questions become quite, I find the school questions become a little bit like robotic, you know? Because the school questions are kind of just like, I keep finding that people just ask the same thing, and then we just end up having the same live stream over and over again. They're either niche specific or generalized advice. Whereas these YouTube questions tend to be a little more like, they tend to be a little more receptive to what we've previously discussed, which allows us to build like a little bit more of a proper discussion, you know? Charlie, do you have a reverse osmosis filter? Yes, I do. Got like an under the sink one. Cool. All right, guys. Well, look, we'll call it there. I hope that you've had a really good day. I hope you all have a good start to the week, and I'll see some of you back here on Thursday. Take care, guys. Lots of love. Peace and love. Get back to work, you lot. See you later.